Hi, my name is Susanna Elliott, and a couple of years ago I had the pleasure of translating from Italian into English a short but extraordinary book. The book is called The Vine Whisperer, and it chronicles the life of winemaker and jazz musician Filippo Testa. It describes the joy, the wonder, and the fear that Filippo experienced when he took over his then almost abandoned family vineyards and turned them into a thriving organic estate. Recently, I've been back to Sicily to visit Filippo, and I interviewed him not about his very eventful history this time, but about his process of making wine. So, Filippo, let's start just by talking about wine and Sicily. How would you describe the relationship between Sicily and wine, or maybe Alcamo, the local region, and wine?
Ma la relazione è fortissima, basti pensare che la provincia.
There is a very strong relationship between the two. When you think that Trapani has more vineyards per hectare than almost any other region in Italy, Alcamo even more so.
Nel comune di Alcamo, gli alcamesi sono famosi perché
The Alcamesi are famous for planting vines everywhere. Even the Alcamesi in New York, who work in amongst the skyscrapers, find a way of planting a vine somewhere, on the balcony of their apartment. It's an intrinsic part of them. Alcamo is one of the most important areas for wine in Sicily. Vines are a feature of the landscape here. They're part of everyone's life.
Fanno parte della vita di ognuno di noi e anche coloro che
Even people who work in offices or banks, almost all of them have a little plot of land somewhere with vines on it.
Quasi tutti un piccolo podere con un vigneto.
And which grapes are associated with Alcamo or with this region, the Trapani region?
Diciamo il catarratto è Alcamo.
The Catarato grape is the grape in Alcamo. It's the grape everyone has always grown and still grows. But at a certain point, the wine market started to demand new varieties, varieties that were untried in Sicily when they were first introduced.
A quel tempo sperimentali. Con grande sorpresa.
To our surprise, we discovered that the new varieties like Chardonnay or Muller, or other well-known grapes, there's a bit of everything here now, Syrah, for example, is grown a lot, that those grapes grew exceptionally well here because of our climate. We have the perfect climate for wine.
Un clima che è eccezionale, proprio nato per la coltivazione della vite. E poi abbiamo un qualcosa che è nostro e che nessuno ci può toccare, che è il sole.
And of course we have something that very few can match, our sun. The sun shines in Sicily for 365 days a year. It's very rare that you see clouds in the sky here.
What do you think the future holds for wine in Sicily?
Io credo che il vino.
The Sicilian wine market is growing. Sicily already dominates a large proportion of the world market. But there is a new market, and that market is organic.
Biologico. E il biologico è veramente il futuro.
Organic is really the future. Sicily is often a pioneer in the field of agriculture, and Sicily has been largely organic for several years.
Quindi adesso sono tanti anni che la Sicilia è quasi tutta biologica.
We produce exceptional organic wines. We're always experimenting with new ways of combating parasites and diseases.
Col biologico sono stati risparmiati.
Thanks to the organic market, millions and millions of euros are saved every year that would have been spent on chemicals and, more importantly, millions of bees, millions of insects are saved that would have been wiped out during the spraying. The vines were sprayed with pesticides every 15 days, and every single thing that had wings died.
Tutto quello che aveva le ali, diciamo, moriva.
Now, thankfully, that doesn't happen, and the vines can only be treated with a natural form of copper sulfate, which means that they are effectively pure.
What about the earth here? I mean, the earth is incredibly rich, red, full of iron. It looks like, it seems very fertile. Tell me about the characteristics of this terrain.
La terra che abbiamo qua è una terra molto grassa.
The earth that we have here is very fertile. We have some sandy terrain, which is very particular. That's where we plant the Chardonnay. Sandy ground holds moisture during the winter and before the summer heat, which helps the vines.
Il terreno sabbioso cerca proprio di farti vendemmiare il prima possibile. Io ho fatto vendemmie dello Chardonnay, diciamo, quasi alla fine di luglio.
I have been known to harvest the Chardonnay as early as July because the sandy terrain faces the sun.
Da dove soffia il vento dell'Africa.
We call it a scirocco, or, in other words, facing the scirocco wind, the African wind. The vines suffer in the heat, but they also produce great results. We've just started to grow nerod'avola grapes on the same terrain. We've just bottled our first harvest, the 2019 vintage, and I have to say that the wine is excellent. Even I was surprised.
What would you say the characteristics of your wine were in particular?
Ogni proprietà ha caratteristiche organolettiche diverse. Ogni terreno è diverso.
Every vineyard has its own characteristics. Every terrain is different. 90% of a wine's characteristics depends on the terrain. But they also depend on the pollination. During pollination, bees transfer pollen from one plant to another, and at the same time they transfer scent, flavor, perfume.
Con le loro ali trasferiscono anche sapori. Le caratteristiche dei miei vigneti sono, nel caso dei vini bianchi,
the white wines we produce here are delicate, with a decent body. The red wines have a lot of body with good tannins. They really give me the most satisfaction.
E che veramente mi danno grandissime soddisfazioni.
And finally, talk to me about the book that you wrote. I mean, I know about it because I translated it. And the poetry that you write, which very few people know about.
Ma la vena poetica c'è sempre stata. Questa è una cosa divertente perché pochi sanno.
I have always had a poetic streak, if that's what you call it. I once wrote a beautiful poem dedicated to a dog, my aunt's dog that died. It was a kind of elegy, a tragic work.
Però mi è sempre rimasta questa voglia di scrivere.
Since then I've written very little, but the desire to write has always been in me. Not so much poetry as feelings, some of my deeper thoughts. I know that my poems are nothing more than thoughts, words that spring from the heart.
Per quanto riguarda il libro,
as for the book, that came from a need to record my story, to write it down in black and white, to let the world know about the things that have happened in my life. My life was once very different. I used to be a jazz musician. I played the piano. I was on a completely different journey with a career in music before me.
Poi all'improvviso succede nella vita che si devia per svariati motivi.
Then, as often happens in life, I had to change direction completely. In the book I describe all the events that have happened since I was 24. Events that took me by surprise and that changed my life, changed my character, changed everything.
Ti cambiano la vita, ti cambiano il carattere, ti cambiano tutto.
People tell me that it's the sort of book you have to read in one go rather than over a long period of time. Anyone who is thinking of visiting our farm should read it before they come, or while they're here. Then they will understand a bit about me and about the history of our vineyards.
Qui per conoscermi meglio.
If you'd like to know more about the vineyards on the Conti Testa estate, you can follow Filippo Testa on Instagram or visit his website at www.gorgodeldrago.com.